Before Europeans arrived in the Americas, the continent was inhabited by numerous indigenous peoples with rich cultures and civilizations. These peoples lived in various regions, from the northern expanse to the southern plains and tropical forests. For example, the Incas, Mayans, and Aztecs in Central and South America had complex social structures and significant achievements in architecture, art, and science. In the northeastern part of present-day United States, lived peoples like the Iroquois, Powhatan, Huron, and others. They developed agriculture, fishing, hunting, and trade. Among them were large confederacies, such as the Iroquois League, which united several tribes for mutual security and peace. European exploration and colonization. European colonization of the Americas began in the late 15th century when Christopher Columbus, an Italian explorer, reached the shores of the Americas in 1492, opening the New World to Europe. Over the next centuries, Europeans, particularly the Spanish, English, French, and Dutch, began establishing colonies across the American continent. The Spanish were the first to establish numerous colonies in South and Central America, as well as in the southwestern United States, including Texas and California. They were in search of gold and wealth, but quickly encountered resistance from indigenous peoples. In the northern part of the continent, the English established their first colony, Virginia, in 1607. Other English colonies quickly followed along the eastern seaboard, from New England in the northeast to South Carolina in the south. The French began their colonization in parts of present-day Canada and Louisiana, while the Dutch established New Amsterdam, now New York. Due to economic and political factors, the colonies began to develop various types of economies, from agriculture to trade, particularly through plantations where enslaved Africans were brought into work. The American Revolution. By the late 18th century, the English colonies in America had become numerous and prosperous, but conflicts between the British metropolis and the colonists began to escalate. One of the main causes was British policy, which imposed taxes on the colonies without their representation in Parliament. This led to widespread dissatisfaction among the colonists, eventually resulting in the outbreak of revolution. In 1775, the American Revolutionary War began as the colonists, supported by the French, fought for their independence from Great Britain. The key leaders of the independence movement included George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and many others. After several years of battles, including the famous battles of Saratoga and Yorktown, the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1783, recognizing the independence of the United States. Growth and expansion. After gaining independence, the United States embarked on the process of forming a new nation. In 1787, the U.S. Constitution was adopted, which became the supreme law of the land and established a system of government with separation of powers. George Washington became the first president, and the country began its path of expansion and development. Throughout the 19th century, the United States actively expanded its territories. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803, the Mexican-American War of 1846 to 1848, and the annexation of Texas, California, and other territories contributed to the country's rapid growth. This was also the period of westward migration, with Americans moving westward in search of new opportunities and land for farming. The Civil War. In the mid-19th century, deep social and economic divisions arose between the North and South of the United States. The southern states were heavily dependent on plantation agriculture, which relied on enslaved labor, while the North was becoming more industrialized and had outlawed slavery. These conflicts eventually led to the Civil War in 1861 to 1865, when the southern states, forming the Confederacy, seceded from the United States. The war between the Union, North, and the Confederacy, South, was one of the bloodiest in American history. After 4 years of intense fighting and immense casualties, the Union emerged victorious, and slavery was abolished with the passage of the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Industrialization and immigration. After the Civil War, the United States underwent a period of industrialization that dramatically transformed the economy. The rapid growth of industries, railroads, and new technologies created new opportunities. At the same time, this period saw a massive wave of immigration, with millions of people from Europe and other parts of the world coming to the U.S. in search of better lives. This period, known as the Gilded Age, was also marked by significant social and political changes, including struggles for workers' rights, women's suffrage, and African American rights. Numerous social movements emerged, advocating for better working conditions, educational reforms, and rights for marginalized groups. The 20th century, a world power. By 1900, the United States had become one of the leading economic and military powers in the world. Its involvement in World War I, which ended in 1918, and its subsequent influence on international politics solidified its position as a global leader. The period between the two world wars was marked by the Great Depression, which began in 1929. This economic disaster had severe consequences for millions of Americans but ultimately led to a series of reforms known as the New Deal under President Franklin Roosevelt. In World War II, the United States played a central role as one of the main Allied powers, contributing significantly to the defeat of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. After the war, the U.S. emerged as one of the two superpowers, along with the Soviet Union, defining the political landscape of the Cold War. The modern era. Today, the United States is one of the largest economies in the world and a global leader in many areas, including technology, science, culture, and military power. In recent decades, the U.S. has witnessed significant changes in its domestic politics, such as the ongoing struggle for civil rights for African Americans, LGBT communities, and women, as well as adapting to new challenges brought about by globalization and technological change. America has faced numerous political crises, economic recessions, and international conflicts, but it remains a country that plays a vital role on the world stage. The United States continues to be a symbol of democracy, innovation, and cultural diversity, though it also faces numerous internal and external challenges. Thus, the history of the United States is a complex, rich, and diverse process that reflects not only the development of a national identity but also the global changes that have shaped the world.